ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरुन् श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरुन् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं स्वावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्ण चैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्ण पादान् सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितं च। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपीशा गोपिका कान्ता राधा कान्ता नमोस्तुते। तप्त काञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृन्द। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम राम हरे
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Shashwin, for that beautiful Mangla Charan. We have today with us Shyamanand Krishna Das Prabhuji, all the way from South Africa, with us in this Zoom meeting. Prabhuji, on behalf of everybody from all over the world, we'd like to pay our humble obeisances. Prabhuji, please, thank you for all your time that you are spending with us. We really get inspired by it. We are reading the Bhagavad Gita as it is, and we are on chapter 6, and the text for today is text 8. Prabhuji, I hand it over to you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Kirtika Modi. Thank you so much. So we're going to read the Sanskrit and then do the word for word, the translation, and discuss the purport. Yes. Also look back a little bit to get the context of the verse, which is important actually, to get the best from understanding one verse. We must see the context in relation to the other verses in the Bhagavad Gita as a whole. So I'm going to read, I say, and then you can kindly repeat. Gana Vijnana Triptatma Kutasto Vichitendriyaha Yukta Itu Chate Yogi Samaloshtratmakanacha Gana by acquired knowledge. Vijnana and realized knowledge. Tripta satisfied. Atma
Atma,
a living entity.
a living entity.
Kutasaha,
Kutasaha,
Saha,
spiritually situated.
spiritually situated.
Vijita Indriyaha,
Vijita Indriya,
sensually controlled.
sensually controlled.
Yuktaha,
Yukta,
competent for self-realization.
competent for self-realization.
Iti,
Iti,
thus.
that,
Uchate,
Uchate,
is said.
he said.
Yogi,
Yogi,
a mystic.
a mystic.
Sama,
Sama,
equipoised.
equipoised.
Lostra,
Lostra,
pebbles.
pebbles.
Ashma,
Ashma,
stone.
stone.
Kanchana,
Kanchana,
gold.
gold.
So this is Srila Prabhupada's translation of the 8th text. A person is said to be established in self-realization and is called a yogi or mystic when he is fully satiated, fully satisfied by virtue of acquired knowledge and realization. Such a person is situated in transcendence and is self-controlled. He sees everything, whether it be pebbles, stones, or gold, as the same. So you can repeat after me. A person is said to be established
a person is
Person is said to be established
in self-realization
in self-realization
and is called a yogi or mystic
and
and
is
is called a yogi or mystic
when he is fully satisfied
when
when he is fully satisfied
by virtue of acquired knowledge and realization.
by virtue of acquired knowledge and realization.
Such a person,
such a
Such a
person
person
situated in transcendence
is situated in transcendence
and is self-controlled.
and is self-controlled.
He sees everything,
He sees everything,
whether it be pebbles, stones, or gold,
whether pebbles or gold,
as the same.
as the same.
Okay, I'm going to look back before we discuss the purport. I want to discuss the context of the verse, discuss the purport. So I'll read the purport a little later. So first thing is we are in the chapter entitled Dhyana Yoga. So dhyana means meditation. Here, the main subject matter is control of the mind. We especially see that from a couple of verses ago. We'll get into that in a minute. So this is the process of Ashtanga Yoga being discussed in the 6th chapter. It is a process for coming to the platform of liberation. In 5th chapter, we were discussing that, how one can come to liberation through Nishkam Karma by activity which is performed without desiring to enjoy the result. Nishkam Karma Yoga. One can come to the liberated platform by performing that yoga system. And at the end of that chapter, that's what's described in the 5th chapter. At the end of the chapter, in 2 verses, Krishna said that also the same platform of liberation can be achieved through Ashtanga Yoga. Just a quick summary Krishna gave there in 2 verses. Now in this 6th chapter, we are seeing a detailed description of that Ashtanga Yoga. So the Ashtanga Yoga system actually is composed of 2 parts. Actually, first of all, Krishna was, actually I'm going to go back to the first verse because we get proper context then. Krishna was saying, I'm just going to quickly go through these verses that will give us good context to what this verse is discussing. One is unattached the fruit of his work, and works is obligated, is in the renounced order of life, and he is the true mystic, not he who lights no fire and performs no deed. This is the 3rd time that Krishna is telling us that we need to work, but in a detached mood. It's a very important principle in Bhagavad Gita, and 3rd time Krishna is telling us that. And why he's telling us? Because in this description of the Ashtanga Yoga system, the main thing is meditation. But in order to be qualified to turn inward and perform that meditation, We first have to be purified through performance of dutiful work in a detached mood, not trying to enjoy the result. And therefore, that's what comes up in the next verse. It's called renunciation. You should know to be the same as yoga, or link yourself with the Supreme. O son of Pandu, for one can never become a yogi unless he renounces the desire for sense gratification. So over and over again, we find this principle in Bhagavad Gita. And here Krishna is enunciating something he's already said as well. Renunciation is the same as yoga, because renunciation means giving up material activities. And yoga means to link with the Supreme. And they're the same, because if we link with the Supreme, we also give up material activities. But it's a little bit more than that as well. Not just to give up material activity, but actually to give up the desire for sense gratification. It's both these things. And that's why Krishna says, for one can never become a yogi unless he renounces the desire for sense gratification. So it's two things. Just to give up material activity is not enough. Actually, we have to also give up the desire for sense gratification. The two are different. In one is an active principle, and the other one is like a desire which sits in the heart. We may give up the external activity, but we may retain the desire. Meditate on sense objects within. Krishna in 3rd chapter said one who does that is a pretender and deludes himself. He says a mityacha, one who acts in a way which is false, deluding himself, thinks he's a yogi, but he's dwelling on sense objects. So therefore both have to be given up. And what we're discussing here is the preliminary stage. And that's what comes in the 3rd verse. There are two stages or two facets of the Ashtanga yoga. The first one is yoga ruksha, and the second one is yoga ruda. And in the first one, because Krishna says, first of all, you have to purify yourself. For one who's neophyte in the eightfold yoga system. So we're discussing the eightfold yoga system. 8 limbs. Those limbs are yama, niyama, asana, pranayam, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. And you notice the chapter's called Dhyana Yoga, the yoga of meditation. But in the 8 steps, it's number 7. So there are many preliminary activities before we can actually meditate. So these are the 8 steps. So Krishna is saying if you're a beginner in this system, if you're a neophyte, if your heart is not pure, then actually your qualification, you have to work. You have to perform renounced work to become qualified to meditate. Now we discussed that also in 5th chapter and earlier on as well. But one can become perfect, come to the liberated platform simply through the performance of renounced work. One can do that. But some souls actually want to turn inward and meditate when there's considerable purity in the heart. And it's a bona fide yoga process as well, Ashtanga yoga, the yoga of 8 limbs or 8 parts, which we just enunciated. No? So that Ashtanga yoga is a bona fide path, but it's very mechanical. One has to follow rules and regulations, yama and niyama. Yama means external purity, and niyama means internal purity. They strictly follow rules and regulations. Like in yama, for instance, I think there are 5 elements in yama. The first is non-violence. You have to be non-violent to others, otherwise you can't perform this yoga system. There are different stipulations within yama and niyama, but it means strictly follow rules and regulations. And then you're going to have to learn to sit for a long time. That picture is there in the Bhagavad Gita. Let's see if we can find it. I'm going to ask my wife to see if she can find it. I'm going to show you that picture. I'll just have a quick look and see if I can find it. Because in my Bhagavad Gita, I've got all the pictures. Some of the more modern ones that don't have some. Yes, I've got the picture. This is it. Can you see this yogi sitting here in meditation? You'll note the length of the hair. And if you look, especially, you'll note the length of the fingernails. How long are the fingernails? So we can see from the length of the hair, the emaciation of the body, and the length of the fingernails, that this yogi has been sitting a long time. Isn't it? You can appreciate that, no? That yogi has been sitting for a long time. So after strictly following rules and regulations, yama and niyama, then one has to learn asana, how to sit. Because if you're going to sit for a long time, this picture's maybe years. If you're going to sit for that length of time, you have to learn to control the body. That has been transported to the West as what they call hatha yoga. That has been taken out of the Ashtanga yoga system and taught separately. sometimes yoga schools also teach pranayama to some extent. Anyway, we'll get to that in a minute. So the point is that when we're learning to sit, we have to learn that the body doesn't bother us. We have to learn to sit in a particular way. And it's interesting, actually, because sometimes if you sit on a chair for a long time, it constricts the blood flow to your legs. And your legs actually begin to, get pins and needles. But if you sit like that, as that yogi was sitting, in the half lotus or full lotus position, the body is so constructed that it doesn't constrict the blood flow. So you can sit like that for a long time, actually. And it doesn't, if you become practiced at it, then the body doesn't disturb. Then the next thing, I said the 6th chapter is a lot to do with the mind, control of the mind. That is the main thing in the 6th chapter, actually. So then first you control the body, then you have to learn to control the mind. And how we do that is through pranayama. Pranayama is controlling the breath, because the breath and the mind are very closely linked. And if we can still the breath, we can also still the mind. So first of all, you learn pranayama, which means actually that what Krishna describes it as, you'll see later we'll come to the description. From the 10th verse through to the 32nd verse, we get a technical description of how you have to perform this yoga system. So it's like, 23 verses. We'll come to that a little later. Begins in 2 days' time for you. Somebody needs to start talk about that in the 10th verse. So it's very, very stringent. It's step-by-step practice. It's very mechanical. You learn rules and regulations. You learn to control your body. You learn to control your breath. Actually, the object of pranayama is to stop breathing. That is the object. Because if you stop breathing, your mind becomes very still, actually. And then the mind can be very easily directed. So that is actually the goal of pranayama. This is why you can't practice this yoga system in this age. Well, you can practice to some extent, but it won't yield a result. And the reason for that is because in this age, men and women's minds are very unstable. The sages of Naimisharanya are saying that to Sutta Goswami in the beginning of the Bhagavatam. They say that the men and women of this age are characterized by 6 things. They are short-lived, they are quarrelsome, they're lazy, they're misguided, they're unlucky. And the sages of Naimisharanya say, above all, their minds are always disturbed. And we can see that, no? If we're just conscious of what our mind's doing on a moment-by-moment basis, you can see the mind is so unstable. But in order to practice this meditation, the mind is to be like a mill pond. There's a saying in English like this, still as a mill pond. A mill is, in the old days, they used to grind corn and wheat by a mill. And the mill is driven by a race, and the race is driven by water. So if the mill is not turning, if there's no water like that, then the mill pond, where the water is stored, is very still. You can get the reflection of it like that. So we have that expression, as still as a mill pond. No? So that's what is the idea of pranayama, breath consciousness. And it begins by focusing the attention on the tip of the nose. And you become aware of the breath entering the nostrils and leaving the nostrils. And you don't take it beyond that. You just keep the consciousness like that. And then you have to have your eyes half closed and sit, so you won't be disturbed. And gradually what happens is you do that, the breath rate reduces and the heart rate reduces as well. I used to practice that actually for 3 years. It reduces and reduces and reduces. If you're a really good yogi, you can actually stop breathing. There's this very famous, they call it the largest religious gathering on earth. It's the Kumbh Mela. That is Allahabad. Every 12 years they have a Mahakumbh, and everyone comes there actually. So many millions of people come there. And if you walk around in that gathering, you will find some people who can do this. They'll bury them under the ground, and they dig them up again in a couple of weeks, and they're perfectly all right because they can stop breathing. But for the average personality, it's not possible actually. This yoga system is for the Satya Yuga. No one can do that in this age, even to perfect pranayama, to stop breathing. We read those stories in the scripture, like Dhruva Maharaj, for instance. Actually he's so expert at pranayama that he threatened to burn up the whole universe practically. No one could breathe because Dhruva Maharaj stopped breathing. The whole universe couldn't breathe actually. So then, Narayan had to come there and present himself, in order that, the universe could breathe again. So this is the expertise of the yogis. In this age, who can do that, actually? No one can really do that. And this is one of the main points of Prabhupada's purports throughout the 6th chapter, that by being devotees, we automatically perform these things. And you'll see that when we get to the purport. So in that 3rd verse, this is what Krishna is saying. That there are, this 8-fold yoga system, I didn't finish actually, this pranayama, that's when you still the breath, then the mind is very still. Then pratyahara. Pratyahara means to withdraw the mind from sense objects, because mostly the mind is thinking about trying to enjoy through the senses. So therefore the senses are focusing on their objects, and the mind is where all that information comes. It's the central point of the senses. So in order for the sage to advance further, he has to not only stop breathing, but withdraw the mind from sense objects. That's pratyahara. Then there's dharana. That is learning to focus the mind. It's an early stage of meditation. And then we get dharana, which is actually meditation. Dhyana, focusing on the supersoul. That is actual meditation. And when it's perfected, then you get samadhi, which means you're fixed. Nothing can remove your meditation from the supersoul. But you see, it's very, very elaborate, this path, and it's mechanical. It's step by step. And the yogi depends on his own power, actually, and his own ability to concentrate and focus his mind. So it's something which cannot really be performed in this age. Or even if you perform some elements of it, there's no real spiritual benefit. You may get some strength in the body from the hatha yoga, some strength in the subtle body, but the spiritual benefit of practicing this process is not really possible in this age. But Krishna here is pointing out in this 3rd verse that there are 2 stages. There is the yoga ruksha and the yoga ruda. And in the beginning, one has to work. So he practices his meditation, but at the same time, he must practice renounced work in order to purify the heart. Because if the heart is not pure, it's just like Prabhupada, for instance, didn't like sometimes his followers wanted to go and meditate in solitude. And Prabhupada didn't approve of that, actually, because he knew that his followers were influenced by the modes of passion and ignorance. So it's better to be active, chant their 16 rounds and use their body and their activeness to perform devotional service and get purified. So this is what happens if you try and perform a yoga system like this one, where you have to focus the mind, then actually what happens if you're not qualified, if the heart isn't pure, you simply think of sense objects within the heart. That's what Krishna was talking about in 3rd chapter. The mityachar, one who's a pretender, he deludes himself, thinks he's a great yogi, but he's just meditating on sense objects. No? So actually what we're going to discuss in today's verse is the more advanced stage. But up to the 5th verse, we are going to discuss actually this early stage, up to the 4th verse, I beg your pardon, up this early stage of working to purify the heart. Actually, that is required. To perform dutiful activity and to renounce the fruit purifies the heart, actually. Because one can't give up the material world until one is considerably pure. Because otherwise what will happen is we'll just think of sense objects, because that's what we're used to. So Krishna is saying here, if one is neophyte in the 8-fold yoga system, work is said to be the means. In other words, we work, dutiful work purifies the heart. We can't give up the material world until the heart is pure. Otherwise, we simply think of the material world. That's the principle. And then Krishna says, for one who's already elevated in yoga, that's yoga ruda, one is on a stable platform, can actually give up the material world. So cessation of all material activities is said to be the means. So Krishna is discussing these 2 parts here. The initial stage, the yoga ruksha, where one has to work to purify the heart, and the yoga ruda, where one is purified and can stop all material activities. But one must perform the initial stage first. So first, this is the 4th verse, and again, we're still talking about the early stage, yoga ruksha. A person is said to be elevated in yoga, and the words haven't got to the end yet, but there's some elevation, there's some, start, some beginning. When, having renounced all material desires, he neither acts or sense gratification nor engages in fruitive activities. So this is hinting at the yoga ruksha stage. This is hinting at it. When we become purified, then what happens is, Actually, we renounce all material desires, not just the material activities themselves, but also the desires. So this is pointing at the next stage, which is the 5th verse. And the thing about this stage of advancement is the mind must be controlled. The mind must be controlled, otherwise there's no question of going forward to the more advanced stage. And that is achieved through renounced work, not performing one's duties with detachment from the result. And this comes up over and over and over again in the Bhagavad Gita. And even as devotees, we use that principle also, but we do it it's a complete process. In these processes we're studying, you have to put down the material attachments before you can pick up the advanced stage of coming to the Brahman platform. But for us as devotees, we do the two things simultaneously. By engaging in Krishna's devotional service, we automatically let go of the material nature. So this is what we see in purports. If you read Prabhupada's purports, you'll see that. And we're going to come to that in the 8th verse as well. Okay, so the mind is a very important thing. This chapter is all about mind control, and we have the same problem. We have to learn to control the mind, and anyone who's chanted japa knows that. Or if the electricity isn't working and you have to get into a cold shower in the morning, you will know what the mind is, because the mind will tell you, no, thank you. But you have to take your bath anyway. So that's how we know it. The mind actually is simply a tool for accepting and rejecting, and you have to learn to control it. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, one of our acharyas, he is Srila Goksho Das Babaji Maharaj's Shiksha Guru, and that's Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati's initiating guru, and he's Srila Prabhupada's guru. So it's some steps back in the Guru Parampara. But he says in the morning, you should beat, I don't know, I always forget which way around it is. I think he says in the morning, you should beat your mind with a stick, and in the evening, you should beat it with a shoe. Because we have to learn, we have to train the mind to become our servant. Not that we are the mind's servant. Mostly if you watch people, they're the servant of their mind. You know, their mind is telling them, drink this, look at that, taste this, touch that. And then people are saying, yes, oh, great senses. You know, I'm not Goswami, I'm Godas. I'm the servant of the senses. So most people are doing that. So you can't perform yoga if you're in that state. So the mind has to be controlled. Therefore, Krishna says in 5th verse, one must deliver himself with the help of his mind and not degrade himself. Because if you allow the mind free rein, it'll want to engage in sense gratification and you'll get bound up in the material nature. That's where we are, actually. Most of us, we're battling with this, trying to control the mind. And then for him who's controlled the mind, 6th verse, the mind is the best of friends. If you control your mind, then the mind will be in union with the supersoul and you'll follow that direction. Actually, we're all following direction of the Paramatma. Some of us are doing it voluntarily and most of us are doing it involuntarily. Krishna says that in 18th chapter, I'm there within the heart and I'm directing the wanderings of all living entities who are seated on a machine made of the material nature. That's what this body is. It's a yantra, a machine made of the material nature. So most of us actually haven't got that mind control together. And we really know about that when we chant our japa. Then you see, is my mind focused on hearing Krishna's name or is it doing something else? And the moment you tell your mind, listen, I want you to do this, what does your mind say? It's like, on some days, we're so busy we miss breakfast and we're not really bothered, But on Ekadasi, when we got to miss breakfast, then the mind immediately tells you, well, you need to eat something now. So this is the nature of the mind. It wants to accept, and it wants to reject. And the nature of the mind is so fickle that the very thing that it wanted to accept 10 seconds ago, now it wants to reject it. And the very thing that 2 minutes ago you rejected, now it wants to accept it. So the mind is to be very carefully trained, to follow the direction of the intelligence and ultimately to listen to the direction of the supersoul. So therefore Krishna is saying, for one who's conquered the mind, whose mind is his friend, the mind does what it's told, then actually everything is done pretty much, everything is done. Because the one in that situation actually comes into contact with the supersoul. We'll see that later. For one who's conquered the mind is the best of friends because it will help you in your spiritual progress. But he's failed to do so, the mind will remain the greatest enemy, because it'll always lead you back to material sense gratification over and over again. It'll bring you back. So therefore, that's the worst enemy, because that's the wrong thing. We want to advance spiritually and learn to let go of the material nature. So this is mind control. No? So now, if that mind control is mastered, then we come to these next three verses, 7, 8, and 9, which describe actually the state of yoga ruda, when we can actually meditate and we can put aside all material activities. Like Krishna said in the third verse, for one is neophyte, work is said to be the means, and one is advanced, cessation of material activity is said to be the means. So if we follow the yama and niyama and the asana, and we do all those things properly, we come to a stage actually where the mind is very peaceful, like a mill pond. So these three verses describe that. They describe the internal state of a yogi who has come to this Yoga Ruda platform, who can actually meditate. Because actually one of our acharyas says that the Yoga Ruda platform means actually dhyana. It means you can actually meditate. And up to that point, we're still in the neophyte stage. So when you can actually control your mind and you can focus it and meditate, that's the stage. So therefore, this is yesterday's verse, I think. No? For one who has conquered the mind, the super soul has already reached. Because the thing is, there's only spiritual material, there's nothing else. And the mind just wants to engage in material. So if we stop that process, we'll automatically come in contact with the super soul. Because there's got to be something, there can't be a vacuum. If we stop engaging with the material nature, then there must be something. So the only thing left is the spiritual nature. So therefore, Krishna is saying, one who stops that process has become qualified himself or herself and has stopped that process of engaging with the material nature, then the super soul come into contact with the super soul. It can't avoid it, actually. So, and then that state is very tranquil. No? One actually then is aware of the super soul, is in communion with the super soul. The super soul directs that yogi. You know, and also the super soul is so beautiful that one actually, having seen that super soul, one can't draw one's attention away from the super soul because it's just so attractive. Krishna in the form of the super soul. So to such a man, happiness, distress, heat and cold, honor and dishonor, all the same. Don't make any difference, no? Because that's all material states. And we're talking about a person here who's ceased material activity. So all those things go away. There is just communion with the super soul, nothing else actually. Just complete and utter love and attention for the super soul, and nothing else breaks that, because the super soul is simply so attractive and the mind is peaceful and focused. So this is what comes. So now we come to today's verse, which we read. A person is said to be established in self-realization and is called a yogi or mystic when he is fully satisfied by virtue of knowledge and realization. We'll discuss this in a minute. Such a person situated in transcendence is self-controlled. In other words, he's under the control of his self. What is the real self? Not this body and all the things associated with it, not the mind, not the intelligence, not the false ego, but under the control of the self, the Atma, who I really am. Such a person is situated in transcendence and is self-controlled. He sees everything, whether it be pebbles, stones, or gold, is the same. So if you see a Kruger, in South Africa, there's a coin called a Krugerrand. I don't know if you know about those in other countries, the Krugerrand. Actually, in England as well, there used to be a coin called a sovereign. There was a coin, it was called a gold sovereign. It was actually 21 shillings. In the old system, a pound was 20 shillings. The sovereign actually was 21 shillings. And they were made of gold. Actually, they haven't done that for a long time. In England, up to 1920, the silver coinage was half silver. But after that, they stopped doing it. But in Victorian times, the sovereigns were actually gold. But they stopped doing that now. Now it's just paper money. Yes. So imagine if you're going down the street wherever you live, and you just happen to come on a bag full of gold coins, you know, sovereigns or Krugerrands or whatever it is, you know. And lying by the side, it just happens that lying by the side is some gravel. Maybe they're repairing the road there, and there's some gravel, some pebbles, and they dug up the road, and there's some lumps of earth as well. So will you look upon the earth and the pebbles and the gold with an equal mind? Will we do that? Well, it's all just material. No, we won't do that. No, we'll click a look around to see who's looking, and then we might pocket. Anyway, there's a whole bag full there. I'm not going to miss one or two, you know. So we may just pocket one or two like that. So this is our condition. Actually, we discriminate in the material nature. This is good and this is bad. But actually, the whole material nature is bad, because it all means rebirth and having to do more stuff in the material nature. So one is on this platform of Yoga Ruda. The mind is steady. It's fixed on the supersoul. There is no question of being even slightly attracted to a whole lorry full of Krugerrands, what to speak of one or two on the sidewalk. And for them, you know, it's all material nature. It's gold, it's pebbles, it's earth. Everything looks the same to them. It's the material nature. Actually, the supersoul is so engaging, so beautiful. There's so much wonderful attraction there that who would be interested in these things? So that is how it's higher taste. That is how it happens, actually. We get the spiritual taste. Okay, so this is the context of the verse and how it fits in. And there's also one more verse on this Yoga Ruda platform before Krishna actually describes in detail how this yoga system is performed from verses 10 to 32. You're going to come to that later in the week. Okay, so we'll look at the purport now. Some very interesting things in the purport. So this is Prabhupada's purport. Book knowledge. Do you know what is book knowledge? I mean, just, you know, when we're younger, you know, we sit down in school and teacher says, okay, did you do your homework? You know, and then depending on how good a student we are, if you like Sashrin, then you say, yes, my dear teacher, I did all my homework. And Sashrin probably gets 100%, something like that, you know. But when I was at school, sometimes we try to get out of doing our homework. Not so good. But when we're learning like that, you know, 1 + 1 = 2, or the Battle of Agincourt was fought in 1512 or whatever. We learn all these things. It's book knowledge, but that's knowledge of the material nature. Even we may study the Bhagavad Gita like that, but it's book knowledge. It's on the intellectual platform. So Prabhupada says book knowledge without realization of the supreme truth is useless. Useless. So if something's useless, can you use it for anything? No. You can't use something that's useless, cannot be used for anything. So Prabhupada says book knowledge is useless without realization of the supreme. And realization is the key word here, because we get knowledge of the supreme through realization, not through book knowledge. You know, you can study all the books you like, but if Krishna does not reveal himself to you gradually, you will understand nothing about the supreme absolute truth, actually. Now, Krishna reveals himself on the basis, in our case, on the basis of our devotional service. The more we perform Krishna's devotional service, the more we come purified. Krishna reveals himself more and more. So this knowledge, this jnana, this knowledge of the soul, the super soul, the prakriti, the time, and the karma, that is all realization, which Krishna reveals to you when he considers we're ready for that knowledge. You know? So this is why Prabhupada says here, book knowledge without realization of the supreme truth is useless. And he's quoting one verse from Srila Rupa Goswami to support this point. This verse is coming from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Atashri Krishna Namadi na bhavet krayam indriyaya sevan mukha jiva dao swayam eva svapadyadaha. So this is a very famous verse from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. No one can understand transcendental nature of the name, form, quality, and pastimes of Sri Krishna through materially contaminated senses. We do have spiritual senses, but the moment our consciousness is flowing through the body and through the material nature. So our senses are contaminated by the material nature. So Rupa Goswami is telling us here that you cannot actually, using your material senses, understand the Supreme Lord. You can't even see him. What to speak of anything else? What to speak of understanding? No one can understand the transcendental nature of the name, form, quality, and pastimes of Sri Krishna through his material and contaminated senses. Only when one becomes spiritually saturated. That when something's saturated, like in chemistry, they teach you that. If you want to grow crystals from a solution of water and a soluble salt, like say copper sulfate or something like that, the solution has to be saturated so that when a little bit evaporates, because if you leave some water automatically there'll be some evaporation. So if you leave a supersaturated solution of copper sulfate in a container and it's open to the air, some of the water will evaporate and the salt will crystallize. You'll get crystals forming in that situation. So it means that there's so much of the salt dissolved in that water that you can't dissolve anymore. It's a supersaturated solution. So we have to be like that as well. We have to dissolve Krishna in our consciousness as much as we can. Supersaturated consciousness like that. So this is what Rupa Goswami is saying. Only when one becomes spiritually saturated by transcendental service, because through service we get to remember Krishna, actually. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam. So that's what we have to do. We have to supersaturate ourselves with service, then we can remember Krishna. Only when we become spiritually saturated by transcendental service to the Lord are the transcendental name, form, quality, and pastimes of the Lord revealed to him. It is only, Krishna says that when we come to 11th chapter, you'll see that. Krishna says, I can only be understood through devotional service, pure devotional service, not by any other means, not by charity, not by study of the Vedas, not by sacrifice and penances, none of these things. Only through devotional service can Krishna be understood. So this is what Rupa Goswami is saying. So book knowledge is of no use, actually. Book knowledge on its own, without transcendental realization of the absolute truth, is a waste of time, Prabhupada is saying. The Bhagavad Gita, I'm reading on now, second paragraph. This Bhagavad Gita is the science of Krishna consciousness, and it's a science. Why? Because science means something which can be experimentally verified. That is how science works. We make observations. We formulate a theory. We do some experiments to test the theory. Does it work? Yes, it's experimentally verified. That is science. So the science of Krishna consciousness is like that. You can experimentally verify it. How? By performing devotional activity, and it will come. Gradually, the things that Krishna is saying will experience them. Krishna says like that in 9th chapter. He says this devotional service is pratyaksha vagamam dhamyam. He says this, it's the perfection of religion because it's pratyaksha. In front of your eyes, you can see it, you can personally experience it. That's what pratyaksha means. Pratya means in front of, and aksha means the eyes. Pratyaksha vagamam dhamyam. You can experience it directly in front of you because you can see it. And for that reason, it's the perfection of religion. This is what Krishna says. So this is a science. It's not blind faith or just, this is what I believe, you know, and you can believe what you believe and I'll believe what I believe. And you can't tell me it's not right because this is what I believe. No, this is a science which can experimentally be verified. So for Prabhupada saying, the Bhagavad Gita is the science of Krishna consciousness. No one can become Krishna conscious simply by mundane scholarship, you know. And what's the proof of that? You know, there are people who've got PhDs in Sanskrit, you know, and they study the Bhagavad Gita and somehow they miss it. You know, they don't understand that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They miss it. And why? Because Krishna tells Arjuna, you know, in the 4th chapter, you've studied that, right? 4th chapter, Krishna told Arjuna, because you're a devotee and you're my friend, you can understand this science actually. And those who are not devotees can't understand it. It's Krishna's arrangement. Because Krishna chooses not to reveal himself to those who don't love him. That's his prerogative as well. He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He can do that. So book knowledge, although we say you must read Srila Prabhupada's books and you must study the scripture, it's only useful up to a point. But when we read, we're reading about Krishna and Krishna's devotees. So it's transcendental knowledge. But it has to be backed up by faith that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Otherwise it will remain close to us. Remain close. Yeah, in the association of devotees, Prem is just telling me actually, Prem is my second, you know. When I miss a point, she'll tell me, hey, you should have said this. So it's a very useful person to keep around. That's why I keep her around. She always tells me when I miss a point. Yes, the best actually is to perform these things in the association of devotees. So when we read, actually, in one sense, it's book knowledge. But because of reading about Krishna and we're practicing Krishna consciousness in the association of devotees, it's useful. But you know, you may find that one devotee reads this particular passage and sees so many things in it, and another devotee reads the same passage and doesn't see those things, because their level of spiritual advancement is different. So the more spiritually advanced we are, the more we see. when Prabhupada writes, the more we understand when Prabhupada writes. So this proves that it's not a question of book knowledge. It's what Krishna reveals to you. But we read because it's helpful. It'll help us to develop the love for Krishna, and then the realization will come. So with this Bhagavad Gita, the science Krishna, no one can understand Krishna consciousness simply by mundane scholarship. One must be fortunate enough to associate with a person who's in pure consciousness. So when we read, we are reading Srila Prabhupada's purports. Prabhupada once said, if you want to know me, you read my books. And Prabhupada is a pure devotee. Now, how do we know that? You see, in our movement, in our Krishna consciousness movement, we don't accept things blindly. How do we know that Prabhupada is a pure devotee? Krishna is telling us, Prabhupada is telling us here, you need a pure devotee to help you understand it. So, okay, we've got Prabhupada, but how do we know he's a pure devotee? So this is a very simple thing. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu made a prediction. It's there in the Chaitanya Bhagavat. You can read it for yourself. In the 4th chapter of the Antya-lila, it's there. I forget the verse number now. It's 160 something, I think. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that my holy name will be chanted all over the world in every town and village. Prabhupada quotes that verse a lot, actually. Now, the thing is, how did that happen? Because it was confined to India, actually. How was it spread all over the world? So Srila Prabhupada did that in 10 years. So this is how we know that Srila Prabhupada is a pure devotee, because he fulfilled that prediction of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That's an amazing thing, actually. Christianity took about 2,000 years to spread all over the world. Islam about 1,500. And Srila Prabhupada took this original Vedic culture and spread it all over the world in 10 years. Nothing like that has ever been done in history. Nothing like that. This is the proof that Srila Prabhupada is a pure devotee. So we have that good fortune. Whenever we pick up Srila Prabhupada's books and we read, we're actually having the association of Srila Prabhupada, who's instructing us step by step in this process. So a Krishna conscious person has realized knowledge. Prabhupada has realized knowledge by the grace of Krishna, because we only get that through Krishna's grace. Otherwise, you won't get. On your own, actually, you can't do it. Krishna will reveal himself to you when you're ready, based on your devotional attitude. You can't read a lot of books and demand that Krishna reveals himself to you. Can't actually do that. It must, as we read and we develop and we try to understand the philosophy of Srila Prabhupada has so beautifully presented it, as we advance, you'll find things will be revealed to you. It'll just come and you think, wow, that's true, that's amazing. No? That's what actually happens. So a Krishna conscious person has realized knowledge by the grace of Krishna because he is satisfied by pure devotional service. By realized knowledge, one becomes perfect. So you notice in this verse, Krishna was talking about jnana and vijnana. Elsewhere in the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that is how the Brahmins function, by jnana and vijnana. And the word Prabhupada translates jnana as knowledge, and vijnana he translates as wisdom. Because you can have all the knowledge in the world, but if you can't apply it practically, then you have no wisdom. What is the use of the knowledge if you can't apply it? So similarly, vijnana means realized knowledge. Krishna has revealed it to you. It's not just book knowledge. By realized knowledge, one becomes perfect, because Krishna has revealed that to you. By transcendental knowledge, one can remain steady in his convictions. Actually, if we don't have that, you can't remain steady, because the mind is sure to shoot off and try and do something else. So it's only possible through transcendental conviction, which has been established by realized knowledge, which Krishna has revealed to you. But by mere academic knowledge, one can be easily deluded and confused about apparent contradictions. One Sanskrit scholar will say, no, the word means this. And another one will say, no, the word means that. And they will argue. Even though they're scholars, they will argue, no, the passage means this. No, the passage means that. So one can be confused. But by realized knowledge, one cannot be confused. One sees things as they are through realized knowledge. And this is the sage which is being described in this passage, actually. One who sees clearly, complete conviction, because the knowledge has been revealed by the Supersoul. It is realized souls who actually are self-controlled, because unless you realize you can't be self-controlled, unless you've let go of the material nature, you can't be self-controlled. And only a self-realized person can do that, because they understand I'm not the body, I'm pure spirit soul. It is realized soul who's actually self-controlled because he's surrendered to Krishna. That is the only way you can do it, actually. Don't think that there is another way. Because we're controlled all the time, actually. It's just we do it voluntarily or involuntarily. We're being controlled by the material nature. Actually, we may not realize that. So we have to surrender to something. What do you want to surrender? Actually, we're surrendering to family members, employers, society's norms, what people tell us we have to think. We're surrendering in so many ways. So why don't we surrender to someone who's actually capable of accepting our surrender and rewarding us accordingly? And Krishna is the only person who can reciprocate with you like that. So we surrender involuntarily to so many people, actually. So why don't we surrender to Krishna, who can actually take care of us properly? He surrendered to Krishna. He is transcendental because he has nothing to do with mundane scholarship. Prabhupada said mundane scholarship on its own is useless. And why would you want that if you're in communion with the Supersoul? If you're in communion with the Supersoul, you know everything you need to know anyway, because that is the nature of the soul, Satchitananda. We're eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss. That's our nature. We only don't feel that now because we're covered with the material nature. So the yogi is practicing this yoga rudhi. Yes, he has that, actually. He understands I'm pure spirit soul, nothing to do with this material nature. And as practicing devotees, that will come to us. But we won't have to go through this very tricky process. Very, very difficult process. Even to perform yama and niyama, or to speak of even asana, very, very difficult thing. That you practice proper internal and external purity. But we have the good fortune that we can practice Krishna's devotional service and get all the benefits of this Ashtanga yoga process, which is so difficult, actually. So for him, in other words, one who's transcendental by realized knowledge, mundane scholarship and mental speculation, maybe Krishna's like this and maybe Krishna's like that, that's mental speculation, which may be as good as gold for others. Some people are like that, They're very proud of the knowledge they have through scholarship. Very, very proud of it. No, I have studied for so many years. I'm a professor emeritus from this university, And, I can tell you how many molecules there are on the back of a postage stamp. People have that kind of pride of their mundane knowledge, They have so much pride. They spend so much time getting it mundane. This is what Prabhupada says about it. For him, in other words, a self-realized soul, scholarship and mental speculation, which may be good as gold to others, are of no greater value than pebbles or stones. Prabhupada's quoting the verse, no? In other words, all that mundane scholarship, unless it's based on Krishna, what's the use of it, actually? Like one time, I think I mentioned this before, one of my all-time favorite Prabhupada quotes. He was asked by one reporter, do you know everything? And Prabhupada said, yes, very confidently. So the reporter said, how many windows in the Empire State Building? And without thinking, Prabhupada retorted, how many drops of water in a mirage? That was Prabhupada's answer to that question. Well, what does it matter? The whole thing is a temporary situation. It's an illusion. What does it matter? What is the importance of it? So how many drops of water in a mirage? So here, from this discussion, we can learn the mechanics of the process of Ashtanga Yoga, how it works. What are the different stages one goes through? How does one practice it? You'll see now from the 10th verse, there'll be a detailed description. You must sit like this. You must have kusha grass. You must have a soft cloth, a deer skin. You must sit with the back erect like a pile of coins. You must concentrate, keep the eyes half closed. Very technical description of the performance of Ashtanga Yoga. But for us, we don't need all that, actually. It's good to understand it because it's one of the bona fide yoga processes and what the goal of it is, meditation on the Supersoul, which ultimately at the end of the 6th chapter comes to bhakti. Because when we meditate on the Supersoul, we get the realization this is a person. And this person is so incredibly great that I should surrender to that person. Then it becomes bhakti. So this is the yoga ladder we're studying, 3rd chapter to 6th chapter. It begins with Karma Kanda, then Nishkam Karma Yoga, Sakam Karma Yoga, Nishkam Karma Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, and then eventually it becomes Bhakti Yoga. So this is the yoga ladder we're studying. But we have the good fortune, we don't have to go up the ladder. I gave this example before. Prahlad's got a picture of the Eiffel Tower. Now, I don't know how many steps it is, but you can take the lift also. So what do you want to do? You want to walk up all the steps, or you want to take the lift? We should take the lift. We should be intelligent. So this is what Prabhupada is directing us, actually, that we should simply perform devotional service, and we'll get all these benefits, you know? Because this yoga ruda stage, you have to come to dhyana before you can actually get that benefit. You know, I think I quoted this before, this very famous sage, Vishwamitra Muni, his personality from Ramayana, you know, he was meditating for 64,000 years and he hadn't perfected pratyahara. He hadn't even got to the 5th stage yet. And how do we know that? Because when Indra sent that dancing girl, it broke his meditation. Why? Because he could hear the ankle bracelets. So a personality like Vishwamitra can't do it after 64,000 years. What hope do you think we have? And Arjuna will tell you that a little later. You tell Krishna, you know, this system of yoga that you summarized seems impossible for me. How can I do something like that? And that's Arjuna. What to speak of us? The Prabhupada's pointing out, actually, that by performance of devotional service, we can get all these benefits. And it's so easy. You simply change. You know, you do what you like to do, but you do it for Krishna. And follow some very simple rules and regulations. Very quickly, actually, we'll come to this stage of yoga ruda, where we'll be fixed, you know, and our mind will be just fixed on the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. And then there'll be no more trouble. So there's a few minutes left. I wonder if there's comment or question.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much, Prabhuji, for taking us through the ladder and asking us to use the lift instead of the ladder, which is...
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you want to do that?
Yeah. Prabhuji, I have a question before anybody can write a question on the chat. Please, if you have a question. Day in and day out, we have this voice inside us who tells the mind, no, this is wrong. You are not supposed to do this and do that. So who is this person? Is this person the intelligence or the soul or the super soul?
Okay, it's a very good question. You see, mostly in our stage, we're not directly conscious of the voice of the super soul because we're not, well, at least most of us. There may be some of us who are. I won't comment on that. But for most of us, we're not at a purified stage where we will take direct instruction from the super soul. But it's also true, though, that the super soul does interact with us through the voice of conscience and through the voice of inspiration. So the super soul may be reminding us, you know, if we do something which is not so good, we may get that reminder from the conscience. But it also may be your intelligence which is telling you. Your intelligence may look back through the memory banks because it's one of the facets of intelligence, memory and discrimination. And the intelligence may tell you, you know, this is not such a good idea, actually. We tried this before and this, and this happened. Or I've heard from my teachers that this is not a good, we shouldn't do this because it will damage my devotional service. So it may, most times it'll be our intelligence which is telling us. But we may occasionally get direction from the super soul, which we feel is the voice of inspiration. You know, this thought just came to me. That may actually be the super soul, although often we're not really so conscious of what it is. We're wondering what that voice is. Oh, yes, it's just intuition. It's like ladies say that a lot, no? That very famous thing that ladies have called female intuition. You know, that it may be the intelligence, you know, combined with, you know, the memories and some discrimination, or the super soul may be giving some direction, you know, but we don't recognize it as the voice of the super soul. We recognize it as inspiration. So most times, if we get a voice in the back of our mind, it's probably our intelligence. But occasionally the super soul may tell you, and you think it's your intelligence.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, that's right. Because if we had interacted with the super soul, then we would not be in this state. So
yes, we wouldn't be in this state. But it's true, though, that Krishna says, as the super soul, I'm directing the wanderings of all living entities. So there is interaction, but it's one way. You know, we get some feeling to do this because we have some desire, and the super soul is directing us like that. But we don't realize it's the super soul. We think it's coming from us. But it is also true that we do get inspiration, and we do get you know, a tweak in our conscience sometimes from the supersoul, but we don't recognize it as the voice of the supersoul. We think it's something else.
Thank you, Prabhuji. There's a question on the chat. What is the mind made of?
It is a material element. Like, for instance, we know what earth is. You know, you can walk outside if you're fortunate enough to have a garden, or if you've got a pot plant in your house, that stuff we know is earth. You know, we can touch it, we can feel it. So we're confident. We know what earth is. We know what air is. We know what fire is. The mind is also a material element. In the 7th chapter, Krishna says that. He says that there are 8 separated material energies. You know, earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. So it's a material element. We can't touch it, but we know we have it because we say, you know, my mind is made up. Isn't it? We say like that, no? So that means we don't say I'm made up. We say my mind is made up. So therefore we recognize it's something different from us. It's an element of the subtle body. It is subtle, but is a material element called mind. And it's the thing that we accept and reject with. Because when we're in the material nature, we need, in order that we can function, we need a tool that would accept and reject. Accept and reject. So that tool is a material element called the mind. So it's made up of mind. I hope that's not confusing to the person, but it's actually a material element called the mind. There are 24 actually. If you stick around to the 13th chapter, Krishna will explain that. How is the body constituted? It is made of 24 things. There's the 5 gross elements. There's the 5 knowledge acquiring senses, the 5 working senses. There are the 5 sense objects, the mind, the intelligence, the false ego, and something called the pradhan. That is how all things in the material nature are made up. So it is one material element. Is that all right? I hope that's all right. That's from Premila. Is that all right?
That's from Kumar Prabhuji. Pramila Mataji has another question.
Thank you,
Oh,
Mataji.
okay.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Is that okay?
Thank you. Thank you. I got it.
So the next question from Pramila Richi Mataji is, where is the mind situated?
You see, we have 2 bodies. We may not be aware of that, you know. We have a gross body. That is the thing we can touch and feel. We're aware of when we get up in the morning. That is our gross body. But we have another body. It is called the subtle body. It is sometimes it's called the astral body or the dream body. Sometimes it's called these different things. Because when we dream, that's what happens. We leave the gross body and we travel in our subtle body. And we experience different things. That's what happened when we dream. You know, and then when we finish dreaming, it's time to wake up, we return to the gross body. It's a bit like falling off a cliff. Many people have that experience. When they wake up, it's a bit like falling off a cliff. You get the sense that you're falling. Because actually you are. Your subtle body is coming back into the gross body so that the gross body will work. So the mind is a subtle element which forms the subtle body. And that normally is in very close, you know, it looks like the physical body, but it's very subtle. If you see a ghost, that's what you're seeing. You're seeing an entity who has a subtle body, but no gross body. And the gross body can be killed or die or this or that, but the subtle body can't. Until we go back to the spiritual world, we always have a subtle body. So where it's situated is a little hard to say. At the moment, as I'm looking at the TV screen, the subtle body is in the same vicinity as my gross body. So the mind is part of that. It's a subtle element. You can't reach out and touch it exactly, but we know we have one because we say my mind is made up. Premela, I don't know if that's all right. Is that okay?
Yes, Prabhuji, that is very nice. Thank you.
It's hard to understand these things because by nature it's very subtle.
Yes, yes.
So we understood that the mind, we are not the body, and now we are understanding that we are not the mind.
Not even the mind. We think we're the mind, you know, that thing which is doing the thinking, we think that's the mind. But you see, under normal circumstances, that happens automatically through transcendental senses. But because we're in the material world, our transcendental senses are covered by the material nature. Therefore, we have this thing called the mind, so that we can think.
Any other questions? Okay, there is another question from Kumar Prabhuji. How many types of mind are there?
Oof. There's only one type of mind, but it can do lots of different things. It can accept and reject in lots of different ways. It's just like Earth, for instance. You know, Earth is Earth. It may appear a little differently, but it's still Earth. So simply everybody has a mind, but the way my mind functions is not quite the same as the way your mind functions. That is due to our conditioning, actually. So the mind acts slightly differently depending on the conditioning. So you could say that there are, in one sense, there's one element called mind, but when we're utilizing it, it appears different, practically speaking, in every different body. It's used differently, thinks differently, accepts differently, rejects differently. So it can be used unlimited different ways, but the element is one. It is the mind. I don't know if that's helpful to you.
Kumar Prabhuji? Yes, he has answered. Yes, he's okay with it. Prabhuji, before I have one more question, but before everybody goes off, we've had 3 new people joining our group today. We have Haripriya Chauhan Mataji. Thank you very much for joining us. We have Jolie Discroll. Thank you very much. And we had iPhone, which was Meena Patel, who has left. But thank you all for joining this group. Please join us every day if you can. But Sunday, it's always Shyamanand Krishna Prabhuji with us, and he really enlightens us. So we are grateful that you could join today. Hare Krishna. Please ask any questions if you have. And you
Hare
can.
Krishna, can you send me the link so I could get it? A friend gave me the link. So
Okay, how do I send it to you? I mean, I
Oh.
send it to you here, or you have a WhatsApp?
don't you have my text, not my phone number?
No.
Doesn't it come up under the name? No.
No, it doesn't, Mataji.
Okay. Well,
If
how
you
can I send? If you
can
I can
send
give
it
it to you.
on the chat, I can take it from there.
Oh,
And-
excellent. Yeah. All right. Yeah.
Right, please type it in the chat. You can just
Yes,
send it to me if you don't want to send it to everybody. My name is Kirtika Patel.
Okay.
Prabhuji, so I have this last question. I know I should be mindful of the time, but please, just 2 more minutes. So there is this man who walks into our room and who is not aware of what is going on. He doesn't watch TV, doesn't hear the radio. He's not aware of anything. And he says, okay, I'm all Krishna conscious. I'm meditating on God. And he doesn't want to eat or drink or anything. So he's not listening, he's not eating, he's not seeing anything. He's not tasting, he's not feeling anything. So he has his senses controlled. But this guy looks like a mudha. I mean, he looks like a non-living thing. So how can we distinguish him from a Krishna conscious person? Because obviously he's controlled his senses.
Sure.
But I don't see him as a Krishna conscious person, because a Krishna conscious person probably is more. Okay, you can tell us, Prabhuji.
You see, Krishna has already answered this question when we studied 2nd chapter, because Arjuna asked 4 questions about the transcendentalist. And Krishna answered, the first question was, what is his symptom? How do we know? And Krishna gave a very definitive answer. If we watch someone that we think is self-realized, they won't perform sense gratificatory activities. They just won't do it, because they only interact with the material nature as much as necessary to keep body and soul together. They won't engage in sense gratification. So that is the acid test. And sense gratification means that they will act, to try and satisfy their senses. So this is how we distinguish, if you like, a madman from a transcendentalist. That even a madman will engage in sense gratification. It may come out in a strange way, but a transcendentalist will never do that, because their consciousness is somewhere else. But it doesn't mean that they won't interact with the material nature, but they'll do it only for the minimum, enough to keep body and soul together. Like, for instance, the example is the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. They would drink 1 cup of buttermilk every 3 days. Would you survive if we offered you 1 cup of buttermilk every 3 days? So you can see that they interacted with them. They wrote their books on palm leaves, So they interacted with the material nature, but everything was used in Krishna's service. Everything. This is our advantage, that we can do that, use everything. So there's a difference between a madman and a transcendentalist. A madman will be, you watch, you detect, they will engage in sense gratification. But a transcendentalist will never do that, actually. Does that sufficiently delineate what you need to know?
Yes, yes, Prabhuji, I think so. I would have thought that a Krishna conscious person would have so much joy and happiness on his face that you would instantly be attracted to him, because he.
Yeah, yes, you might be. You might be, or they. You see, as well, they may not show it. Like the famous example is Jad Bharat from the Bhagavatam. Everyone just thought he was a madman because he felt if I behave like a madman, no one will bother me. So you may recognize and you may not, actually.
Okay, thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you very much for this.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Mataji, I have not received your number yet.
No,
Jolie-
no, I will. I just want to ask a little question.
Yes, yes, please.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Krishna.
What is the what shall I say, the key thing to help one to understand Prabhupada's book? When I say understand, to get the essence of what he's saying.
So the best way is to study in the association of devotees. That's what we're trying to do here. You know, we're getting together and we're reading Bhagavad Gita and we're discussing and we're trying to understand. So that is actually the recommended way. You can read and you will get something, but the best way is to discuss this subject matter in the association of devotees, because then the understanding will come. And the more advanced devotees you can find to discuss it with, the better.
Mhm.
Advanced devotee will help you to understand. So this is the best way. It's the recommended way to discuss Krishna consciousness in the association of devotees.
Hare Krishna.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's wonderful. I mean, I'm doing that already, but I'm not in the company of real senior Vaishnavas. But
Just do the best you can, you know.
yeah, because sometimes because we're individuals, we have our different take on the thing, you know, the essence of it. So sometimes I get a bit confused, and that, I mean, you can read and read and read and don't understand. And I suppose I'm impatient. I want to understand.
So another thing you can do is there is a website called ISKCON Desire Tree.
Oh, yes.
Are you aware of it?
I heard of it, yes.
You might want, because there are recordings of so many of our very, very senior Vaishnavas, Prabhupada's disciples and others, you know. So, you know, if you have time, you can look up ISKCON Desire Tree and go onto the audio section, and there are so many. And, you know, you might find that, because naturally we find that we resonate more with some devotees than others. But this is the way to try and find those that resonate deeply with you, that will help you to understand Bhagavad Gita and other scriptures. No? So you could try iskondesire.com. And then in the menu, you can look up audio. And then there's ISKCON Sannyasis and ISKCON Prabhujis and Matajis. And there's so much wonderful nectar there. You'll have to play around a little bit to find those seniors that really resonate with you.
Yes. Yeah.
Is that okay?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining today and asking your questions. I've sent the link. It's the same link every day, and it's the same time. So if you are in the UK, it is from 5 to 6. And if you are in Kenya, it is at 8 o'clock. Haripriya Chauhan Mataji, where are you from?
Who, you asking me?
No,
Yes.
Haripriya.
Haripriya Chauhan, because she sent me her number. And
Hare Krishna Mataji, I'm from Kisumu.
you're from Kenya. Okay.
Yes.
So 254 in the beginning.
Yes, please.
Okay, Jolie Mataji, I've still not received. So when I receive, you are from where? Jolie
I'm
Mataji?
from UK. We're in
+44.
the Bhaktivedanta Manor.
Okay.
That's my home temple, Mataji. That's where I started my devotional career in the
Oh,
Bhaktivedanta
wow.
in 1987. And my wife came to that temple in 1985, I think, 1984. That's our home temple. So it's a very special place for us.
It is a very special place. Yes,
Yeah,
it
we're
was donated by George Harrison, as you know.
Yeah, we miss Radha Gokulananda and Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman. We miss them.
Oh, wow, yes. They
That's
are
wonderful.
so beautiful. And
Yeah.
every day they're so well looked after and dressed. Yeah.
We know
I suppose
Gadada.
you get
We
the
know Gadada, the head Pujari. We remember him from that time. Gadada, he's
oh
the head
yes,
Pujari.
yes.
Gadada Prabhu.
Yeah.
Sorry, you were going to say something. I cut you off.
No, you didn't. I was going to say, I think you can get the pictures of the deities, can't you, every day?
You can.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true. But
Yeah.
to have their presence is another thing. You know, the picture is one thing.
Totally. Yes.
Yeah, when you're there in front of them, that's another thing.
Hare Krishna, yeah.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. Yes, thank you.
Thank
I'm
you.
going to try and make a commitment because I work as well. So I really enjoyed whatever I heard today.
Kindly
Okay, so
join.
we look forward to seeing you again then, or at least hearing you again. Can we see you?
Well, I'll try. Sometimes it
Let me
works,
see you,
sometimes.
at least.
Hare Priya.
That's me. I'm an elderly
Hare
seed.
Krishna.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Nice. It's a bit impersonal, and everyone comes on and you can't see their faces. We
Yeah,
like
I don't. Yeah, I think people have choice, though, so they don't do it, and you think,
so they
oh,
don't show themselves so
I'll
much.
do the same. Yeah,
But how would it be if I give the class and I don't show myself? How would it be?
not good.
No one would like that. So I feel very
Actually,
happy.
yeah, I think people should say that, and it will attract the audience
Yeah,
better.
maybe. But also sometimes people don't show the video because their audio is better that way. It goes like that sometimes as well.
Yes, yeah.
So it
Might
takes
be an
more
excuse.
bandwidth. It takes more bandwidth to show the audio.
Yeah, it takes
So-
more bandwidth to show the video. Yeah.
So I
That's
understand people.
what it is. I'm not showing the video so that my audio is good quality.
Yeah.
Hare
So
Krishna.
where are you, Prabhu? Which country?
We're in South Africa, Cape Town, South Africa.
Wow, yes.
The world
Yeah,
has become a village now.
It's become a very small place.
You
Yeah.
know, it's become a very small place now. We can talk to people from, Kenya or Kisumu or, London or wherever.
Yeah.
And all over the world just so easily,
We've got a Prabhu from South Africa, Vrindavan Prabhu.
Vrindavan Chandra?
Yes.
Yes, we know that devotee.
He does amazing book distribution and classes, Bhagavad Gita classes, yeah.
That's
A
wonderful.
chapter a day.
Okay, that's great. You're going to become a great devotee if you study under him then.
Well, yeah, there's 3 of them, they take turn, and then other people come and help because it's a busy time of the year. Kartik
Sure.
book distribution, and then the December one. I'm involved in that, which is
You can study
wonderful.
under these senior devotees and everything will happen for you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Hare Krishna. Over to Path Prabhuji. Path
So how
Prabhuji.
would I get your contact number, Mataji?
I thought you were going to give it to me, but I can give you. I'm just putting it on the chat. Are you able to have
Yes.
the chat? Because once I switch off, you won't have the chat. Can you take it down right now? I'll
Yes, I will, yeah.
Okay, Path Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much. It's really a wonderful and nice session. And we are so grateful to His Grace Shyamanand Krishna Prabhu. You are giving your precious time. And I'm so grateful you are giving your time on basically on Sunday. It is very helpful to us. And we are really grateful to this session today, this yoga ladder and yoga system. Also, I thanks to Haripriya Mataji after a long time. You joined here. It's very grateful to us. Haripriya Mataji is senior devotee in Kisumu. She served many years in Kisumu temple. And I hope she is also desire idea to come to the Eldora temple. But maybe there are some circumstance or situation she cannot able to do. But hope, we pray to the Krishna. If Krishna's mercy, then she will come to Eldoret and serve Shri Radha Shyam Sundar Devji and Jagannath Balabhadra.
Hare Bol, Hare Bol.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
We thanks Haripriya Mataji. Are you here, Mataji? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, are you talking to me?
No,
No,
I am talking
Hare
to
Krishna.
Haripriya Mataji. Yeah, it's okay. Thank you very much for everyone. And also, I thanks all devotees joining across the world. On behalf of ISKCON Eldoret, I thanks all of you, and especially thanks to His Grace Shyamananda Krishna Prabhuji for your precious time and giving this Bhagavad session to us. So I request all devotee, please unmute yourself, and for glorification of His Grace Shyamananda Krishna Prabhu, please chant Hare Krishna mantra once. Please join. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna
Krishna,
Krishna, Hare
Krishna,
Hare,
Hare Hare,
Hare Rama, Hare
Rama,
Rama, Rama Rama,
Rama,
Hare
Hare
Hare.
Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare
Hare
Vancha
Krishna.
kalpatarubhyasya kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
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 Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna. Thank you.
Jolie Mataji, did you get my number?
Oh, you sent it on the WhatsApp?
I can't send you on WhatsApp because Mataji, I don't have your WhatsApp number.
Oh,
So
um,
how can I send you? You please send me your number, then I can send you.
yeah. Shall I tell you it now?
Yes, please.
077
077
96
96
620
620
554.
554. And this is a UK number, yes?
Yes.
077 966 20554.
Yeah, I think you have to put 44, don't you?
Yes. I'll do that.
Hare
I'm in
Krishna.
the UK right now, but
Thank you
I'm
so
using
much.
my
Yeah.
Indian number. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna. I love your name. Kirita.
Ika.
Kirtika.
Yes.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Haribol.
Haribol. I'm ending the session.